and you were able to get witnesses there to describe what had happened, what would be the number one questions you'd be asking them about what they would have observed on the body so that you could make a determination or some hypothesis on what might have killed him?
Well, I think from the perspective of, and this is to the exclusion of not having a video is what we're saying here.
That's right.
So, right. So I think that.
Yeah. Do you think if you had to forget the rest of the case and who it was, just pretend it wasn't Charlie Kirk, it was any kind of case where we saw someone shot from this far away and what obviously happened with a lack of exit wound. If you had to go into court and prove that a 30-06 did it, I guess that would be from the prosecution side, you believe that you would have an extremely difficult case in front of you to do that and convince a jury that that happened.
Yeah, because jurors are not required to leave their common sense at the door. And in fact, in an opening, and a good defense lawyer will tell them that in the opening, you can't bring in any fact-based knowledge about this case. The only thing you're allowed to learn about this case is going to come from that witness stand and what the judge tells you can consider. And if the judge says you cannot consider something, you are not permitted to consider it. But at the same time, you're not required to unpack all the common sense, all your lived experiences, put them in a suitcase, put them by the courtroom door, walk in, make a determination, pick it back up, and leave on your way out. You're allowed to consider your lived experiences. This is Utah. It's a rural place. It is these people are not unfamiliar with firearms. They're just not unfamiliar with firearms.
You're not either. You fire a lot in your life.
I shoot and am a fan. And it's just inconceivable to me that you'll catch 12 people on a jury who all 12 will go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And not just makes sense, not that's just possible. Again, the standard is reasonable doubt.
Right.
Almost absolutely certain. You know, a reasonable person could not disagree with this outcome on any one of these elements, including that it was a 30-06. And I think that's a very, very steep burden considering. Now, you're going to be able to pay an expert to come in and say it's possible. Right?
Yeah, you can pay any expert.
And I say this as someone who's hired a lot of experts. It's not unlike most professions. You're paying them for a service. What do you need me to say? Okay, I'll be happy. I can come up with a mathematical scenario where that's possible. I can tell you examples of how it might have happened. I can, experts are allowed to hypothesize. So I can tell you a way in which it might happen. Well, the defense is going to go find somebody who's going to say impossible, not possible. And so this is ultimately going to come down to a battle of the experts. You're going to have an expert from the prosecution side. You're going to have an expert from the defense side. And you're going to have a jury of 12 decide which expert they like better on that issue. Mm-hmm. But they're also going to have their lived experiences. They're going to have their common sense. If you've ever fired a 30-06, you know that sound. It's different from a 308. It's different from a 223. It's a deep, big, powerful sound. It's a huge round. It's like firing a cannon. And if you've ever shot something with a 30-06, you're immediately going to say, no, I don't believe it. You're going to have a really powerful expert from the prosecution to overcome that lived experience.
Joseph, if we didn't have a video of it, because obviously most cases you went to in your life, it's not like you had a video of the shot happening.
No, I wish I had. Yeah.
Right, that would have made it easier.
No kidding.
But without even the video, so starting with just looking at it, if you got to the scene, let's say same scenario, the body was taken off the scene, obviously, because they had tried to do life-saving measures, and you were able to get witnesses there to describe what had happened, what would be the number one questions you'd be asking them about what they would have observed on the body so that you could make a determination or some hypothesis on what might have killed him?
Well, I think from the perspective of, and this is to the exclusion of not having a video is what we're saying here.
That's right.
So, right. So I think that probably from my perspective, just talking to people and not having videography and not having a body to see at the scene in place. My big question, first off, I always ask about sound. And that's one of the common things that we go, what did you hear? Sight is one thing, but what did you hear, And then you consider the dynamics of this environment that this place is in, because where he was perched is down in a hole, essentially. And they're saying that this round was fired from an elevated position. Well, sound can be deceiving, and we've seen this played out over and over and over. I've seen it played out, on the street, relative to cases that we might work, because you don't know what the point of origin is, but you want to get as many perspectives as you can relative to this. Right now, you have this huge collection of people that were there, right? And how many direct statements did they take at that moment in time? So I would personally start with sound. What did you hear it? At what point in time did you hear it? And then what did you see? Where were you standing when you saw this? How far away were you when you saw this? And what was your initial response? Because people will say they heard something and then they didn't follow the rest. They didn't follow the rest of what's being played out before them. They'll turn away, they'll duck. You'll have all this kind of dynamic environment. You can actually see it in the video. You'll see people, kind of reacting like this. And then so you're going to have multiple POVs on this as well. And again, this particular case is separate from anything I've ever worked like this, like where even if I had a huge collection of people, the biggest collection of people I've ever had that actually witnessed a shooting was under 100 people. They're saying thousands, maybe 3,000, I'm not really sure, that were there that day. So that many witnesses, that many eyes on this situation, I'm very curious as to what these statements are going to be like.
Little sidebar here. I don't know if this will be helpful. If it's not, just ignore it. But you were on the scene of the Richard Jewell case, which was a bombing
Right.
in 1996 at the Atlanta Olympics.
Right.
Okay. So that's not a gunshot. It's a bombing. But the same kind of questions that you're wondering right there with what is in this case a gunshot, were you asking
And we
people?
had videography with that too.
You did?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can see the explosion. Jack Mack and the Heart Attack were playing. There was a concert, and the actual single fatality that we had, who was a school teacher from South Georgia, she was standing there, and she was standing adjacent to like a bronze statue. And if she had been standing 1 foot to the left when that thing detonated, she would have lived. But she caught a sheet metal screw in her eye and went into her brainstem. So yeah, we had videography of that. Of course, it wasn't the quality that these things rise to today. But I mean, can you imagine? Plus, you had a lot of injured people there.
Right.
We were very fortunate that night.
But you were asking similar questions
Yes.
about the dynamics and everything because they were obviously ducking for cover.
Yep.
The same situation.
Yep.
Okay. What about the kinetic energy? You and I had talked about this in episode 448, and there's a lot of debate on that. But if you fire any gun, let's just start with that, center mass, obviously, you're hitting it where it can most kind of explode across and actually have the energy evenly distribute. If you fire it off mass, it might behave a little differently. I don't know. To me, it still is very suspect that there wouldn't be an exit wound or anything like that. But would it be possible for a 30-06 to not exit, in your opinion, if it doesn't hit center mass and actually hits on this side where there's more arteries and I don't know.
Yeah,
like
softer
fleshy?
tissue is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And, because you are left of the midline. Now, I can say definitively that I see a defect appear and blood appears, or what appears to be blood, right, appears from that defect in the neck.
What appears to be blood?
Yeah, I wasn't there. I can't say definitively that is blood, right?
I thought he was going with the Charlie still alive theory.
Yeah, I was getting real Epstein body vibes.
If you want to get your ass into a sling with an attorney on stand, unless you can test the blood you say that you see and confirm that it is blood, like with a Kastle-Meyer test at the scene, that ain't blood. You can say it appears to be blood. So it appears to be blood. That
Very lawyerly of you.
Thank you. I've been burned enough. So you see the defect appear, right? And then you see what appears to be blood exiting forth from that location.
Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.